So for our speakers, a couple of quick introductions. First, we have Bruce Bunnick, who has been in college admissions for over 34 years. He's currently the director of admissions at Lehigh University. His enrollment experience began after earning a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in education from Wilkes University in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where he previously held the position of assistant dean of admissions. He's been at Lehigh since 1997 and has specialized in areas including transfer admissions, athletics, recruitment, and a variety of others. And then our second speaker is Sarah Bombard. Sarah is an 18-year veteran of college admissions. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in school counseling, both from Lehigh, so a two-time Lehigh alum joining us. Along with her traditional admissions experience and officer roles, she also leads our marketing and communications efforts within the office, ranging from print and digital efforts, and is a regular occurrence on the Lehigh Admissions TikTok, which if you haven't checked it out, they do a great job over there. So a little plug for the admissions social media. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. Bruce, Sarah, really excited to have you guys on and to hear more about kind of what's been happening in the higher ed landscape. I know with the current administration, the College of Education College of Education Department of Education has been a very common topic. We had the Supreme Court decision a couple years ago. We had Operation Varsity Blues, generative AI. There's all kinds of stuff to dig into. So I'm going to put my screen down and I'm going to give you guys the floor to run us through all the things that are happening in that space.
Thanks, Bryce. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I never like to assume that everyone's joining us from the East Coast, so I hope everyone is well. And thank you for joining us for what I hope will be an informative session that helps everyone understand the admissions process, the landscape, our environment, where things are important, and some items that are going to be increasingly important in the years ahead. We have some slides here for all of you, and I'll ask my colleague, Sarah Bombard, to sort of move through them. I wanted to share initially in this first slide some of the commonly understood, although sometimes cryptic. I know that's kind of that doesn't make much sense, but the forces that are exerting themselves on the admissions landscape here in the US and specifically here at Lehigh. You can see from the list, the COVID-19 pandemic that we're emerging from, obviously, other things from free speech and AI to the FAFSA simplification to the US Supreme Court. So there are a lot of external forces that are acting on the higher educational landscape writ large. And many of these obviously impact our work here at Lehigh. Some of them that obviously are beyond our control, and other things like the introduction of AI that we are, as an operation, seeking to embrace as best we can, and we're all in the learning process of how this could benefit us. But just to make a quick comment on a few of these things, I'd like to just begin by the FAFSA simplification, Supreme Court rulings, et cetera. These have been recent developments in the higher educational landscape, obviously with the late June 2023 ruling of the Supreme Court, Students of Fair Admissions versus Harvard and UNC, that has changed the landscape in terms of the elimination of affirmative action in higher education, the admissions landscape. That has placed some restrictions on our work and the work we do in terms of how we can recruit students and messages, et cetera, that we can send, how that affects the work we do in terms of evaluation of applications, et cetera. But I do want to say, and I think this is worth stressing, is that our commitment at Lehigh to creating and welcoming a diverse class of students from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, from all over the world, we are fervently committed to that endeavor. Yes, there are some obstacles that are placed in our way, but again, that commitment to diversifying, broadening the class, et cetera, still remains consistent. COVID-19, obviously, who's not been affected by that? We are all in that world where we're now, it's kind of sort of behind us, but I feel like the residual effects is still impacting students who are looking at colleges, and the moments when they were probably in their elementary grades or their middle school grades, where they were subject to virtual learning and online learning, and sort of the impact of coming out of that. We are still working with students who in their essays are talking about their COVID experience, or perhaps the impact on their mental health and what it's meant to them. So that's still part of it. I feel like with every passing year, we're hearing a little bit less and less of it. Some of you, maybe all of you, are familiar with the Operation Varsity Blues scandal that had occurred recently, and I'll give a kind of a selfish Netflix plug. There is a pretty good documentary on Netflix about Rick Singer and his work and the role that sort of this backdoor to college admissions has created. And I will say, having been an admissions practitioner for so many years, and myself having been in the athletics realm on behalf of Lehigh, I have to admit, I can't help that maybe some others would feel the same way, that piece of athletics recruitment could provide that unintentional backdoor to the process. I will say, for the record, it's never happened here at Lehigh that we do qualify all of our student athletes. We're very purposeful. We're very serious about making sure that the student athletes that we recruit are representative of the general underclass students that we are recruiting here at Lehigh as well. But it is interesting that this went on for several years, and it was brought to light, obviously, through a number of Hollywood stars and people in the world of finance, et cetera. But it has left sort of a blemish on the process as well. And virtual engagement, we're still in that Zoom space with regard to recruitment, et cetera. But these are a lot of different aspects of the process that still are weighing on our conscious, and we're still aware of them. You're watching the news today, and it's protests on campus and the reaction, and the Trump administration, the Department of Education, and the restrictions that are beginning to place on what we think of as free speech on college campuses, et cetera. So there are all of these external forces that are acting on the world or the higher educational landscape. We too here at Lehigh are very, very aware of them, and we're trying to work around them. So it is an ongoing process for us. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Sarah Bombard. I'll be happy to answer questions. Well, you're muted.
I think that's 2025. You think I'd know how to do this by now. So hi, everyone. And Bryce, thanks for the lovely introduction. I'm going to be handling a little bit more of the, what can you do? What is there to be done? So one of the things that Bruce mentioned was we have been committed to having a really thoughtful review, and the way we refer to that is a holistic review. So I'm going to share some slides just to illustrate some things. So we use the holistic review, and that means that we look at more than just numbers, right? It is not simply, can you row fast enough to be recruited for this team? It is, how have you performed academically as a student? And that's not just a GPA. It's including the level of coursework that the student has taken. Are they honors classes? Are they college prep classes? Are they advanced placement classes or some other flavor? The grade trends. And so we're looking at how students' performance may have changed as they either have adjusted to high school, as they have taken more challenging coursework or taken different classes as they have gone through their high school experience. And one of the changes in COVID was going test optional. So we are going to consider testing for students who wish us to consider it and who report us those test scores. We will not consider it for students who are not interested in having that as a piece of their Lehigh application. We look beyond the academic performance, because being a Lehigh student means being involved and engaged in a part of a community. You're not just in a Zoom classroom taking, classes and getting grades. You are a part of the campus, and you're a part of clubs and organizations and a residence hall. And so we look into what students are involved in, the kind of background that they come from. Are they the first person in their family to go to college? Are they from a long line of Lehigh alums? Are they from what state? What languages do they speak? What do they care about? Evidence of maturity. We look at the writing. We look at recommendation letters to learn more about those pieces of the student. And of course, in their essays, they share different topics and what they care about. We ask them about their future interests and how Lehigh can help them with those. We ask them about their, personal and career goals, what they want to accomplish in college, and whether we kind of use that calculus of like whether or not we're a good fit for them. And we ask them about how they might help Lehigh become a better place and how Lehigh can help them become a better place. And that's all the stuff that we're considering. So it's not as simple as getting all A's or taking all advanced placement classes. Those are wonderful. But part of the highly selective admissions process that we're lucky to have, and you can see some of the numbers. I don't know what years our alumni friends are here. I know there are some of you, but in 1974 we got 1,600 applications, and this year we got 19,000 applications. So it's a little bit of a different animal. And it's about building this community. We're a small enough place where we want to have students who are interested in different areas of study, who are contributing different things. And all of the things that we look for in the student's application is also filtered within the lens of Lehigh and the institution and what our goals are and what we need to prioritize. We cannot admit an entire class full of, oh, I love that you're putting your years in there. Amazing. Thanks for putting your years in the chat. We can't admit an entire class full of finance majors. I know the finance department would be very upset. All the other departments would be very upset. We want to make sure that we have people representing all different, academic interests, different extracurricular interests. We can't just have, every single student admitted to play women's tennis. That doesn't make sense. So we want to make sure that we are meeting Lehigh's goals and objectives, that we have the programs filled out that we can, that we have students from all over the country, all over the world. We do have a limited budget. You're all welcome to donate a lot of money so that we don't have a limited budget. We can have an unlimited budget. That would be wonderful. But ultimately, the amount of money we are able to give out to students is a factor. And then, students' different skills and talents. We want students who can juggle. We want students who are Eagle Scouts and Girl Scouts Silver and Gold Awards. We want athletes. We want debaters. We want students for music programs and theater and everybody in between. So for those of you who are in this session because you have a student who might be going through this process, I'm glad that you're here, and I hope that you continue to engage with us as an office because we would love to chat with you more and get to know your student. If you're here and you're, thinking of applying to graduate school, this doesn't necessarily apply to you because it's a different animal, undergrad versus grad admissions. And if you're a current student, thanks for being here, but you already got in. So you don't need to worry about this. You've already done it. People ask us a lot, in this world of changing landscapes and different priorities of institutions, and it seems like selection getting more and more challenging at institutions like Lehigh, institutions in the top 50 ranked universities. How do you get in? How do you even get admitted to college nowadays? And ultimately it's remembering that every college is interested in getting the students that are right for them. And you can stand out. There are ways that students can really make a mark in their application and really come across through to the reader in the admissions process where we can get to know them. So yes, we look at all the factors that I mentioned before, but there are some factors that are more important than others. It is wonderful that you are from Mississippi. We would love to have more students from Mississippi in our community. But you also have to be academically successful, right? We want to make sure that you are not going to come here and then get scared away by Calc 1. It's a very intimidating class here. I know I took it, and many of you probably did too. So the factors that are weighed are important. Writing the world's best essay is going to open a lot of doors for you. However, the academics piece also has to match. What you're interested in studying also has to match. Lehigh doesn't offer nursing, and you could write the best essay and have the best grades, but if you say, I know that I want to be a nurse and nursing is the pathway for me, then ultimately we are not the right fit institution for you and you may not be admitted. You can choose your pond. And so, people talk about being a big fish in a big pond or a little fish in a big pond. You can pick your pond when it comes to college admissions. So for those of you who are parents and working with students who are going through this process, there are levels of selectivity of institutions, right? Lehigh's right about that 27% admit rate mark. Our admit rate in early decision is significantly higher, more than double. So if Lehigh is your top choice, your pond is going to get a lot smaller. You're going to be a much bigger fish in the pond if you apply early decision 1 or 2. If you have a 2.8 GPA and a 500 SAT and you're applying to Harvard, that's a really, really big, that's an ocean. That's the Pacific Ocean, and it's going to be very difficult for you to stand out. I think that when you consider colleges and adding colleges to your lists or your students' lists, considering those ponds and where they might be in that pond is going to be an important discussion with you and the student and their counselor. Each page in an application is an opportunity. So we read every page of an application, and when students tell us something new about themselves on every page, that's what helps you stand out. It's very easy to fall into the trap of, well, I'm really good at this one thing. I'm really talented at coding. I've made my own apps. I've designed these things in my school, and I'm going to talk about that at every opportunity. But then I, as a reader, don't feel like I get to know a three-dimensional person. So we really want to make sure that you're maximizing the opportunities to go through an application and tell us something new. We host in the Office of Admissions lots of events for our applicants in how to best kind of assemble an application and how to talk about their activities, how to answer our supplemental questions. And those are all really wonderful opportunities for students to share something new. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that you played the ukulele. I didn't know that you came to a summer program here on campus. Wow, that's really exciting. And so we like to feel like we're meeting a real person through an application. I encourage students to consider their recommenders. At Lehigh, we require 1 from a teacher and 1 from a guidance counselor. More is not always better. I think the record is 14 recommendation letters. Don't beat that record. We don't want to read more than really 2. A third letter can sometimes be helpful. And 14 is kind of like, uh-oh, what are you trying to prove here? Yeah, Bruce?
If you have that many letters, you're mounting a campaign as opposed to presenting, the true side of you. I think that's way too much.
Absolutely. Yeah, you may as well just get your name on a ballot somewhere, because that's enough signatures that you could probably run for several types of office. So, choose the recommenders, choose people who can speak to you. I often have conversations with students that they want to have the teacher that they got the best grade in the class, write the letter. But that doesn't necessarily speak to effort or work ethic or ability to recover from setbacks. And so if you have a student who says, well, I'm best at science, so I'm going to have my science teacher write my recommendation, that's okay. And if the teacher knows them really well, then fantastic. But if there's a teacher who can really speak to their, ability to rebound from things, or how they help others in the classroom, or how they approach learning in a creative way, that could be a much more impactful letter. And then again, that's another opportunity for me to learn something new about the student. I've already seen the grades. I know what your grades were in that class, but I want to know who they were in that class. And senior year matters. We do absolutely look at senior year grades, both in the mid-year and at the end. And so if there is a difference in performance between what we were expecting you to get or what you have traditionally gotten, then what you end up with, you might get a very nasty letter from, it's not nasty, it's actually very nice, but a letter from Bruce saying, hey, this isn't the performance we're looking for, and we need to have a talk with you about it. Nobody wants to do that talk. Not that Bruce isn't very nice, but yeah, you don't want to have that talk. So just to kind of give some action items to parents, assuming that most of you in the room are parents or step parents or loved ones of potential college applicants, start where you are. If you're the parent of an 8th grader, start with them being in 8th grade. You don't have to be worrying night and day about whether or not they will be admitted to college right now. I have 2 kiddos. They're Lehigh class of 2038 and 2040. So if you have any 7 and 9-year-olds, I hope that our kids are attending together. But I'm not really talking to them so much about college right now. Start where you are. If you've got a freshman in high school, a rising freshman, a 9th grader, talk to them about what classes they're most excited about and what classes they like. See how they do. What clubs did they join? Did they try anything new that they really loved? Did they try anything new that they didn't like? I'm a big fan of, if you're going somewhere, and you're near a college, drive through, stop by. You can do a formal tour. That's wonderful. But if you don't have the time, or you don't want to make the effort, just drive through a campus and give them a sense of what campuses look like. I hope you all bring your kiddos to Lehigh and let them see that. But there's a lot of different types of campuses. You know, we're not very urban. We've got stuff nearby. We're not in the middle of a city. Bring them to an urban campus. Bring them to a rural campus. Let them really see what being far away looks like. You know, see what might appeal to them size-wise, location-wise. See, for sophomores, same thing. You can start with the classes that they like. Is there an opportunity to take more of those? Is there an opportunity to attend maybe an open house of a college that's near your home, or that they're really interested in learning more about? Junior year is when it starts to ramp up, and we would hope that they're starting to kind of think more seriously about where they want to be in the country, or areas of study, or if they want to, you know, have an athletics kind of experience, or a performing arts experience. They're going to need to start working on, you know, maybe portfolios, or being recruited. Ultimately, senior year is when it really hits. And so those of you who are parents of rising seniors, I wish you the best of luck. It will all work out fine, but this is when they're writing the essays, and they're, you know, paying the money to apply. It's not free typically. It can be, but it's not always. They're learning about the supplements. Yes, there's even more writing. We're hosting a session tomorrow night about the Lehigh supplement and how to answer it. So not worrying about things like supplements when you have a ninth grader is going to be really important for preserving your mental health. Learning the vocabulary. Supplement, what do you mean? I don't know what that is. Well, that's part of the vocabulary. Learn about early decision versus early action. Learn about test optional, test blind, test flexible, and know that these terms might evolve and change, and they might also be different depending on the colleges that your student's looking into. Talk to them about fit. What does fitting mean? Does it mean being close to home or far from home? Does it mean having, you know, certain areas of study? Does it mean hearing certain languages spoken on campus? Does it mean seeing people wearing certain types of clothes? Like, fit means different things to different people. I knew when I was looking at college that I hated gym class, and Lehigh didn't have a required gym class. And I thought, oh boy, this place is perfect. Sign me up, right? I didn't need more than that. Being a little hyperbolic, but that's okay. What is it for your student? What do they really care about? Collect questions. Do you have a gym class? You know, what's it like to change majors? How do you consider students from early decision differently than regular decision? Or do you offer early action? And all those questions. I like to collect them so that you know which questions to ask at each institution, and then you can keep track of them. Kind of the elephant in the room is talk about financial expectations. So this is when you and the adults in the situation, whether that's, you know, two parents that are biological parents, whether that's grandparents that are involved, guardians, anything else, really have an honest conversation. Every college is required to have something called the net price calculator. And you can go in and you can put in information about your current situation financially, and your assets and your income, and it'll say, oh, this is about the financial aid package you would get. Some of the net price calculators are better than others. Some will factor in merit scholarships. Some will factor in just need-based financial aid. But ultimately, have a conversation with the adults, and then have a conversation with your student, because they're going to be an adult too. You know, is your expectation that they take no loans whatsoever? No loans at all. Okay, that's an expectation to set. Is it that you will pay $30,000 a year, and anything above that they're responsible for? Is it that you want them to get a merit scholarship, a full ride? Is it that you're expecting athletic funding? Having those conversations now sets that expectation, and can affect your list, and can affect the questions that you ask at colleges and universities that you might be interested in. Choose where you look for advice. I mean, we work at Lehigh. I can't give you advice on applying to really any other college, but ultimately watch out online. There's a lot of people on my TikTok feed that are like, hi, my kid got admitted to this school last year, and now I'm an independent counselor. And I'm like, oh, okay. Watch out on Reddit, College Confidential. Anybody can say anything on the internet. I have regularly seen students post on our TikTok, I have this GPA and I have this test score and I got denied. And I was like, you did not have either of those things. That is not true. And you got waitlisted. You didn't get denied. So, just be aware that when you look for advice, the best course of action, if you can get a hold of them, is asking the actual admissions people at that college. And finally, parents, you are going to be the passengers. You should be the passengers. I know it's so tempting to drive. You've been driving your whole life, but your student is the one that's going to be filling out the application and, attending this institution. So it's important that they feel like they have ownership over the process. So that's the end of my slides. I did see a couple things in the chat about the webinar, and so I would be very happy to share the registration link for that. I'll put that in the chat. But yeah, I guess we can take some questions.
Awesome. Bruce, it sounded like you were going to say something quickly.
No, I know that I went through my session sort of from a 10,000-foot perspective fairly quickly, but a couple of things I just really wanted to comment on that Sarah also touched on. Coming out of the COVID pandemic, obviously Lehigh adopted a test optional stance we began in fall of 2020, and we've decided to remain a test optional institution for the foreseeable future. That is entirely your son or daughter's decision. That's your child's decision. I feel like the best advice that I could give is have them take either the SAT or the ACT without reporting it, and then understand their scores and then making a decision. Making a decision as to whether or not they'll include standardized testing in their application, which means if I include it, I want you to incorporate my test results in your evaluation of my application. We do obviously place high emphasis on the quality of the high school transcript because that's a more elongated record over time, and it represents the student's level of challenge from 9th through 12th grade. And relative to the school, we don't tinker with grade point averages, we don't recalculate GPAs. We use the grading system that's in place at the school. But this whole notion that should I or should I not submit standardized testing, I think doesn't always have a one-size-fits-all answer. There's not an accurate answer. I just think it depends on the student. If they themselves are happy with their scores and they decide, I know what Lehigh's middle 50% range is, I'm going to submit because I feel like I fall somewhere in the middle or maybe toward the higher end of that range, fantastic. But even if a student has scores and they're in that middle to higher range of our 50% range and they decide not to, rest assured that it's not going to be they won't be penalized. We do not as a staff sit back and say, gee, because the student goes to this high school, standardized test results ought to come with them, that there's probably a higher probability that the kids in the school are going to take that standardized testing. But it really is, specifically, it's about context. That's the way we do it here at Lehigh. As you're searching with your children, I would say ask that question of how they value it. And you're probably all reading that a number of colleges and universities throughout the United States are returning to requiring SAT. Obviously, MIT was the first, and then there seemed to be this cascade of different institutions that have returned to standardized test results. We will remain optional for the foreseeable future. So I just wanted to make that point as well and emphasize it.
So somebody in the chat asked, and this is the slide about that, specifically the kind of impact of test optional. So we launched that in 2020, and you can see that the majority of students, totals 100, majority of students submitted SAT and 30% submitted ACT. And then the middle 50% range of enrolled students. So these are the students that came that fall, not the applicants, not the students that were admitted, but the students who came, and our heads in beds. The average was 1280 to 1420. So 25% of the students that attended Lehigh that year, or in that cohort rather, were below 1280 and 25% were above 1420. Same thing with the ACT, right? 25% were below 29, 50% were between 29 and 33, and then 25% were above 33. And then in 2024, it's quite a difference. So we really see students choosing to self-select. I grew up saying I'm not a good test taker. And if that's you, then I encourage you to consider test optional. Take them, see if you do well, and maybe you do better on the SAT or the ACT, and then you can use that score. But we did see a big jump. And so that is something to be mindful of, that only about 25% of the students in the class were below a 1380 that reported.
Awesome. So Bruce, Sarah, lots of questions that are coming in through the conversation. Real quick for the audience, I'm going to launch a poll quickly just to get a sense of who all is in the audience with us today. I know that we're all going to fall under probably one of these affiliations. I know that there's some prospective parents or prospective students, a lot of alums. I think going through those class years, I saw everything from 1966 to 2021, so a really, really wide gamut of our audience members. So while these answers are coming in, question for our speakers. So Valerie asks, what weight does achievement in the arts compared to sports have in relation to admissions? And then second part, what is the university doing to ensure diversity at Lehigh for not only those who have historically struggled racially and socioeconomically, but now that universities are under direct threat regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how is Lehigh kind of responding to the current status of what the administration is discussing, as well as how does the process look for students who have achieved well in artistic or musical ventures compared to sports?
I think that's a great question. And I know the person who wrote it said they have to hop off soon, so I'll kind of get to it. I'll ask Sarah if she wants to weigh in as well. But it's a question of a person's individual talent within their own life, right? It's not that we expect or we have this anticipation that every student or the majority of our students are going to lean in one direction with regard to their extracurricular accomplishments versus another direction. It's a student who might say, I am talented, I play the piano, or I'm an artist, et cetera, et cetera. And we are really interested in how deeply they dove, what that meaning has to their experience in high school, and how those talents and traits will translate into their being part of the Lehigh community and what they will add, what they will bring. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's one extracurricular versus another. It's consistency, it's passion, it's the willingness to have accomplished or achieved, or at least sharing that information with us. And so that's my take on that really, really important question. And then the other piece, when the Supreme Court ruled in June 2023, I think many institutions nationwide were very deliberate in their essays where they wanted to kind of prompt the students to talk about their backgrounds, their life experiences, their everything they've experienced in life. That was a bit of a way around, because we can't ask, actually I shouldn't say that, because the federal government still through iPads collects racial and ethnic information on your enrolled students. The race ethnicity question is still asked, but we mask it. We don't see it when the application comes across. It's not included. So from what we used to do pre-SCOTUS to post-SCOTUS is different. But in their essays, they might bring out their fact that they are a caregiver in their household for younger siblings, and I'm a single child, or I'm a first generation student, et cetera. So we did manage to sort of tease some of that out in their personal essays. That's the best remedy that we have, given the fact that we can't see race, ethnicity, but we're trying to measure, again, their life experience. And that's a little bit more challenging, but something that we're becoming more finely tuned and aware of as time goes by.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. So quick results from the poll. So obviously the vast majority of folks here are alumni. Some may currently have children who are pursuing the application process. And then also a number of parents, faculty, and staff as well. Also, so just kind of an interesting look to see who our participants are today. So we got about 10 more minutes. So I want to try and cover some high-level questions for everybody, so that way we can keep the conversation going. And then there are a couple of questions that are more kind of specific tips from students that asking about kind of the process. How do you get a feel for schools? How do you make yourself stand out? I think some of these things Sarah addressed a little bit, but we maybe dive into those a little bit deeper. So first, let's see. So what determines a percentage of international students, and what sort of outreach does Lehigh do in supporting international students or low-income students and things of that nature. So in terms of, not necessarily, what people would think of as like the bread and butter, but for students who maybe don't have as much access or ability to travel to campus to reach out, what is Lehigh doing to still have access and be able to connect with those students?
Absolutely. I'm happy to chat about this because I do work with doing this kind of outreach. And I'll put in the chat a link if you're curious about the data of our classes. You can see some data on our website. A lot of it is just public. So first is that specifically with international students, we are very limited by funding. They don't qualify for federal funding because they are non-citizens. Typically, there are, of course, always citizens abroad, and that's somewhat of a different conversation. But the percentage of international students is impacted by our ability to fund students. We are looking for students from all over the world, and so we don't necessarily want to have 100% of our international students from any one place in the world. We want to make sure that that's spread out. And I think the current stat is we have undergrad students from over 60 countries on campus. So we do outreach with counselors, with students who, come into our system that look into us. We do travel internationally. We have, in the past historically done some travel. We have an admissions representative that works with students in India specifically and chatting more with them, getting to know them, getting to know the schools, getting to know the counselors. So we do a fair amount of outreach to international students, but the biggest limitation is not interest. It is finding that balance of proportion in the class. We tend to be around 8%-ish. 12% may also include international students that are graduate students. But overall, we tend to be between 8 and 10% in the undergrad. As far as income and ability to pay and why that's important is because we have something called the Lehigh Commitment. And the Lehigh Commitment is that if a family's income is $75,000 or below, if the student is admitted, the student will receive automatically a full tuition grant. So you apply for the aid, we see your tuition or your family income, and you automatically will get that full tuition grant. Often it also covers more than that. And so that would be partially room or board or fees or what have you. So because we've made that commitment, and that's for any student that we admit, we do need to be mindful of the amount that we put out on the street. So that is a wonderful thing that allows students who look at the price tag and panic and say, my family can't afford that. It allows them to know that we will be supporting them in as many ways as possible to access all of the amazing things that they can get by coming here. The cost shouldn't be a barrier.
Wonderful. So we're getting kind of a number of questions around kind of general admissions events coming up through the fall. Some are tours, some are asking about potential interviews, regional information sessions, kind of up and down the East Coast. So is there a good link or resource for the audience for upcoming admissions events, either in their areas? And if you have that accessible and dropping that in the chat would be wonderful.
Absolutely. We've got 2 open houses coming up on campus, September 13th and October 19th. That both are weekend days. Interviews on campus will be launched shortly. Interviews in your area will depend on our staff's ability to host them and offer them and kind of their travel schedules. You are always welcome. If you are a potential applicant, you are always welcome to contact your admissions counselor. And so that might mean it's me or Bruce, or it might mean it's another one of our colleagues. And so ultimately the link that I just put in there is for our contact list. Send us an email, reach out. Hey, are you coming to my area? Are you coming to my school? Pleased to meet you. Here are some questions. You're welcome to introduce yourself.
And I would also add that if your schedule permits, and I noticed that when people were adding their class years in there, some were recent, some were in the 80s, et cetera, which is great. Come back to campus. We all can, agree that Lehigh is a physically stunning campus. It's changed. Even in my time here, there are certain new buildings that have come up and buildings that were renovated. What hasn't changed really are 2 things. Obviously, Lehigh still remains a very hilly campus. So we know that, you have a very good, well-developed set of calf muscles on this campus, lots of steps. You all know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But the other piece that I think is equally important, and I hope it's gratifying to our alumni, is that this institution's commitment to providing the best experience for the undergraduate students, the fact that we want to put faculty members in front of our students, those people who are leaders in their respective academic disciplines, but they're also mentors. They are colleagues to the students. They are people who inspire the students. So that whole idea of a rigorous, challenging education, there has been no change in that. It's still here. We've got great faculty members. We attract great students who rise to that occasion, who prepare in high school for the demands and rigors of this kind of curriculum. But you know that our kids are very collaborative. This is not the, forgive the expression, it's not the Lehigh of 2025 or the last maybe half decade or so. It's not a cutthroat environment. This is not the kind of a place where students say unofficially, in order for me to be successful, you have to fail. This is the type of a place where there aren't huge egos, right? These are students who are collaborative, they're friends, they're respectful of one another. And I think that shows through in a multitude of different ways. So we're really lucky to have such a wonderfully qualified, but also, it's hard work. We're admitting almost, we're saying no to more students today than we have ever in Lehigh's history. That is something it's not obviously it's not an easy part of our job. But if your sons and daughters enter this process confident that they will land and everything is going to be okay with your support, I think they've won half the battle.
Yeah. Awesome. So we have just a couple minutes left. One more question that I wanted to bring up because a couple of people had asked it earlier in the presentation around legacy admissions. So how does Lehigh take legacy into account? Very quickly, what does legacy mean in college, higher education and college admissions? And why is it something that's not on the common application?
So legacy at Lehigh means a parent, step parent, aunt, uncle, grandparent, sibling. However, the thing that's most meaningful for us is not the amount of DNA you share with that person. It is the amount that the Lehigh alums tend to talk about Lehigh, right? And get you excited about it, and the passion that we all have for our institution. It's like the fact that you've grown up with somebody and you have probably heard a lot about Lehigh from them. You are pretty inclined to give us a shot. You are kind of living this experience of somebody who has been there. You have heard about it probably your whole life, good and bad, right? And you're still applying. That's a huge show to us that like you've had this opportunity to learn more about who we are. And so it doesn't necessarily get weighed as heavily as something like an essay. It does not get weighed more heavily than the why Lehigh response. And I'm going to link in the chat because I think I might have linked it incorrectly. The supplement session where we do ask, do you have Lehigh family members who attended? What year are they? Do you have family members who work here or worked here? What is your legacy connection? You still have to answer those questions appropriately. There was a student in recent memory who did not seem excited about Lehigh, and everything in the supplement was like, my dad is forcing me to apply here. I don't want to go. Didn't admit him. Dad called next day, furious. How dare you not admit my student? He's, ride or die Lehigh. He wants to be here. And I said, okay, tell him to accept a spot on the wait list. Reached out to that student. He said, no way, not interested. No, thank you. Hard pass. So, the legacy piece is interesting for us because we know you've had opportunities to hear about it, to learn about Lehigh, to get a personal perspective. But it is not going to be something that is a huge factor for you. Sorry, in the decision making.
Wonderful. So we're right at time now, Sarah. That was a great, concise answer to a legacy question that can go on for a really long time.
Concise, but
with that, everyone, I know that there was a number of other questions that we were not able to get to, and I apologize for that. But that's a great way for you to connect with the admissions office, connect with Sarah and Bruce and the counselors over there. They're a wonderful staff. They're really here to support students and make sure they get the answers and information that they need to make an informed decision about whether Lehigh is going to be the right place for them. So with that in mind, I want to say a big thank you to both of you for presenting that wonderful topic. Thank you to all of our audience for taking the time out of your day to join us for a really interesting conversation. And keep an eye out for our next topics as they come out in the next coming weeks. But thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day.